Welcome to Etown Everywhere podcast. I'm Nellie, your co-host. This is episode 16 of Etown Everywhere, a podcast featuring fun facts and friends from around the world. The show is brought to you by Elizabethtown College's Office of International Student Services.
Hello everyone, I'm your co-host Luke, and each week we will be taking an adventure around the world. This week's featured country is France. We have a special interview with Cassie, who will be talking about our featured country of France.
Taking a swim across the big pond to our featured country, here are some fun, fantastic facts about France. France is officially known as the French Republic. France is the most visited country in the world with over 80 million visitors per year. The famous Eiffel Tower in Paris was built as the entrance point for the 1889 World Fair. It is one of the most visited monuments in the world. One of the 4 Grand Slam tennis tournaments, the French Open, is held in Paris every year. And the most famous road bicycle race in the world, the Tour de France, zigzags through the French landscape.
Hearing about all those fantastic fast facts makes me want to move to France. But before I do, I would like to know what kind of climate and weather to expect. In France, you can expect the weather and climate to be generally cold in winter and mild in summer, but mild winters and hot summers are usual along the Mediterranean Sea and in the southwest of France. Now let's hear from someone who knows a lot about France. I'm here in the studio with Cassandra, who studied abroad in France, and on behalf of the Etown Everywhere podcast, I would like to give her a warm welcome. Cassie is an international business major in the class of 2017. So, first off, Nellie has a couple questions that she'd like to ask Cassie about France.
Welcome, Cassandra. What is one thing that France is best known for?
The typical response to such a question is cheese, wine, but while I was there, I discovered that they have an eclectic variety of scarves available at their department stores. A lot of the females, of course, wear scarves, but also the males, which was quite interesting because you don't usually see that in the States. Which was cool to see. Even in the sunlight, they'd wear scarves. So that was interesting
That's
to note.
Super cool. I know in Spain they also everyone wore little scarves, so that was really neat. Like sometimes I'm tempted to wear scarves even now, even if it's 80 degrees outside, because they just look so nice.
Yeah, it's a fashion statement, I suppose. Mm-hmm. And also crepes, of course. You can never go wrong with those. Oh my gosh, I would eat a crepe every day to class. But it was a lot of walking, so you kill the calories.
Which is good. Why everyone's so skinny. Next question. What is a misconception about France?
I would say maybe their arrogance and stubbornness. I feel as though, and maybe I'm being a bit ignorant in saying this, but the Parisians seem to fit that bubble more so than the people I was centered in the south of France, where life was pretty chill, and they seem to have the same perspectives. Whatever else there is that we usually consumer norms.
Mm-hmm.
Those were similar between the French and Americans.
So where exactly in France were you?
It's called Aix-en-Provence. It's near Marseille, which was really cool. It's a port. Marseille is a port, so there are a lot of boats coming in.
So did France live up to your expectations?
Oh, yeah, that and more. My goodness. I wasn't expecting the city to be as grandiose as it was. Because I was thinking I would just enter into a town that's like the size of Elizabethtown. I was thinking I would just be comfortable in a small campus zone, but instead they had the the college was integrated into the city itself, so you'd have to walk through the busy streets of France and all of their little go-karts, which I almost got hit several times. But as far as the people, they were all so welcoming, because I think Provence must be a college town.
So, were there any laws that you found strange in France, Kat?
It might not have been a law. I'm not sure how legal it was, but they would often go on strike, like the bus drivers and even the school teachers. Not the university I attended, because that was an American university, but I think the local schools. Yeah, because I would have to take a bus some days into the city, and some days you'd see that you'd be waiting hours for a bus that never came, so thus you're late to class. And I had to explain to my professor that the bus never came, and then she's just laughing the whole time because it's so typical of an occurrence for the bus drivers to go on strike, even the taxi drivers. I sure hope they're getting their benefits worth.
So what are some similarities and differences between the US and France?
Oh gosh. Well, in regards to food, we value it highly in both areas. Of course, though here we're always so time-oriented that we don't take the time to enjoy food as a social event, whereas the French, I was living with a host mom, and she would often have her daughter over. And we would always wait until she returned home, that we were all seated at the table together to eat dinner and thus have a conversation about how our days went and like politics. Oh my gosh. Oof. American politics too, because the presidential election and all that lovely things that are happening here. But they seem to have it as a social event where we just base it on a necessity of life. It's definitely more rushed here than it is in France. It's definitely a much more lackadaisical life overseas, at least in the city I was in. Yeah, they liked to take their time walking and just enjoying friendship and their scenery. And here it's so, oh, I've got to go to the next place. Oh, I'm thinking about tomorrow. And there they're thinking about, oh, well, take a breath and just let's enjoy this moment, which was such a radical difference for me to experience coming from such a time-oriented lifestyle.
We can all read on the internet about France, but it probably won't be completely accurate. So can you tell us how you would describe France?
It's a kind of lifestyle that one can incorporate into your day-to-day lives, of just being more appreciative of others and of yourself especially. Though they live for others rather than themselves. And that's just based on my my silly observations of people walking through the streets. Like there was oftentimes people helping each other. 'Cause here we're just so stubborn and self-important and self-serving, and we never give time to think of the bigger picture. And there they just have such a willing personality to be more present in the lives of others and present in the present rather than the future or worrying about the past. And it's a city of just, there are so many lights and love and kinship and how do you say that word? Camaraderie? Oh my gosh, I fell in love so easily with the city. Oh gosh.
That's so nice, and it kind of ties into my next question, which is what do you miss most about France?
Oh my gosh, aside from the crepes, there was this store called Crepes A Go Go. It was under the passage. There was a passageway. It was like an underground tunnel almost from one side of the fountain to the other, so you'd go underneath the street. It was weird. I couldn't figure out the logistics of it. But you'd walk through this passage, and oh my goodness, you're just hit. There's a stairwell, and at the base, you're just hit by this aroma. This lovely aroma of just Nutella, crepes, and oh my gosh, lemon, citrus, and mushrooms, and ham. Though of course, not all those ingredients are put in one crepe. You can choose.
Yeah.
You can choose your kind of crepe, but it just smelled like, oh, some kind of heaven. So I miss the scents because you could look at pictures and there's the image. So it's not the visuals that I miss, because I could just flip through my photos on Facebook. So you got the visuals there, but the scent lacks. Because it's not as though you can just take a scent with you. The chocolate bars, oh my gosh, I don't mean to damage Hershey, because we're right next door, but it's just, it's not as grand as the chocolate overseas, because they have such rich cocoa, and it just melts in your mouth.
It's creamier. It's
So
way creamier.
yes, you
Chocolate
notice that
here is
too.
really bitter. So
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
And my last question is, do you have any fun stories related specifically to the culture in France or anything wacky that happened to you?
Oh, on bus rides, you're not usually supposed, or it's not the, I guess a cultural faux pas that I encountered is I went on a bus and everyone's so silent. No one's talking. But here in the States, you're used to chit-chatting on the bus and whatnot. So but anyway, so I was on a bus chatting on my phone loudly. It seemed so loud because everyone was so quiet. So I just continued on my way, because that was the only time that I had access to talk to my parents. I had the minutes for it, so that was great. And they're all looking at me, and they're glaring at me, and I don't mind. I just keep chatting. And then I get off the phone. I hang up, and this lady beside me is just, who do you think? She says, "Who do you think you are? We don't talk that loudly." And I was just caught off guard, because apparently it's not normal in quotes, for them to, I don't know, maybe they find the bus trip a point of reflection and relaxation. Though for me, it's just typical to continue with the conversation. So that's what I thought was normal. But it wasn't. And that caught me. That threw me through the loop.
Thank you so much, Cassie, for coming and joining Nellie and I on Etown Everywhere podcast. So thanks.
Thanks
Cassie.
for having me.
Speaking of students from around the world and students in general, here are 5 wacky, worldly, wonderful words of wisdom for this week. Your GPA is mostly important if you're applying to law school, med school, or any other grad program. Your grades are important, but the reality is that a good GPA alone will not guarantee you a job. Keep an eye on the future. Senior year will be here before you know it, and so make sure you don't put finding a job on the back burner for too long. Tip number 3. On the other hand, you don't want to stress out about the future. Savor your friendships and your time in college. Tip number 4. It is normal to experience culture shock when leaving the college community. And number 5. Connect with the Career Center at your school or university to plan how you will find a career path that fits you best.
Coming back to information about this week's featured country, France, here are some famous songs/artists from the country of France. Pony Pony Run Run, Edith Piaf, and Noir Désir.
Welcome to this Etown Everywhere news brief. In our featured country of France, the French have less confidence in the safety of vaccines than the residents of 66 other countries recently surveyed by researchers. Researchers interviewed over 65,000 people in France, the largest survey on confidence in immunization to date. 41% of the respondents in France disagreed with the assertion that vaccines are safe. On average, just 12% of respondents in other nations disagreed with this statement. The survey, conducted between September and December 2015, also asked respondents whether they thought vaccines were effective, important for children, and keeping with their religious beliefs. In the United States, 8.8% questioned the importance of vaccine for children, 13.5% were not convinced they were safe, and 9.6% had doubts about their effectiveness, and 10.5% had concerns because of their religious beliefs. Okay, everyone, it's time for your favorite part of the show. Drumroll, please. The joke of the week.
What did Mr. and Mrs. Hamburger name their daughter? Patty! That was hilarious. I can't wait until next week to get another laugh in. Idioms are a group of words that don't really mean what they say. What they actually say can sometimes seem silly. If you don't know the special meaning of an idiom, you won't understand what someone is trying to say. Here is our idiom of the week, dime a dozen, which refers to anything that is common and easy to get.
Thank you for listening to Etown Everywhere, a podcast featuring fun facts and friends from around the world. The show is brought to you by Elizabethtown College's Office of International Student Services. If you would like additional information about this week's podcast, please contact the Office of International Student Services at oiss@etown.edu or at 717-361-1594. I'm your co-host, Luke, and remember, never stop exploring the world around you. Have a terrific day.